Hello, Stamps community. My name is Carlos Jackson, and it is the privilege of a lifetime to serve as Dean of the Penny W. Stamps School of Art and Design, an artistic and design-oriented community dedicated to educating those who are seeking to build creative lives in the service to society. Today is a true privilege to introduce Narsiso Martinez, a visual artist who lives and works in Long Beach, California. Narsiso graduated from Evans Community Adult School in 2006, earned an Associate of Arts degree from Los Angeles City College in 2009, a BFA from Cal State Long Beach in 2012, and an MFA from Cal State Long Beach in 2018. Narsiso has earned many awards and exhibited his work nationally and internationally, currently represented by the dynamic LA Chungking Road Gallery, Charlie James. It is not my place to preface Narsiso's life and journey. That is his story to tell if he chooses to tell it. What I do want to do is speak to his work, not all of which, but much of which offers representation of the farm worker, those peoples whose hearts and hands are in the earth, working in the hardest conditions to provide our sustenance, our food. In this time of great excess, of tremendous wealth accumulation, we're seeing not just growing wealth disparity, we're seeing a political discourse in government which is targeting the most vulnerable, the worker, the immigrant worker, whose labor has fed our country, a country of immigrants on indigenous land. Many of those very farm workers being indigenous to these lands themselves. Never has our work been more important than now to represent the world as it is and to make plain the conditions for why a future more humane, more human, more just, more equal, more democratic, more abundant, more joyful, more full of love and desire is necessary. Please welcome Narsiso Martinez.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to be here, and I want to thank MSU Camp, somewhere in here they are, and I want to thank everybody who's here to listen to the stories and to my story, and also thank you to everyone who is listening online, I guess. And what I guess what I'm going to do is, not I guess, this is what I'm going to do. I'm gonna speak about my background, hopefully not for so long, and then I'll show some slides that pretty much represents the work that I've been doing. Again, my name is Narsiso Martinez, and I'm originally from Oaxaca, Mexico. I grew up in a small farming community called Santa Cruz Paparutla. It's a Zapotecan community in the Central Valley. It was really rough growing up in that little town. It seems like it was forgotten by the, I don't know, politicians and even religious institutions. So yeah, this is pretty much summarizes my lifestyle growing up. I would go to the fields, help my parents. I feel like it was always against my will, but I have to go to the fields before going to primary school, either like, I don't know, 6th grade, 7th grade. And I remember like being a kid and seeing teenage kids coming from either Mexico City or the United States and wearing like nice tennis shoes and nice pants every year for the celebrations of the community. I really wanted to be like that. I wanted to wear nice shoes and nice clothing. So when it was time for me to be in my late teens, I decided to come to the United States as well. And I don't know, I think it was culture shock, obviously, but also I really wanted to be immersed in the culture. I really wanted to know what the movies were about. I remember going to the movies with my nephews, and they were born here, so they know what was happening, but I didn't. And I didn't know what the songs were about. So I asked my brother if he could take me to a school to learn English. So he took me to Hollywood High, and then I would be taking classes every day from Monday through Thursday from 6 to 9:45. And at that time I was changing tires at a mechanic shop. And I remember my boss didn't want me to go to school anymore because he claimed that it was still daylight and we still have work to do. So she recommended I should go to this other school called Evans Community Adult School. So this school was, I guess this school was more, I don't want to say better, but it had more opportunities, I guess, because they taught adults English, and they have a high school program. So I enrolled at Evans Community Adult School, and the years went by, 6, probably more than that, 6 or more years, and I felt like I was still not speaking English. But I was able to write sentences, paragraphs. So I asked my teachers if I could retake the programs. They said no. And, but they suggested I should just keep taking classes. And because they had a high school program for adults, I decided to enroll in high school classes. I got kicked out at 9th grade when I was in Mexico. Obviously I wasn't understanding the materials. I failed more than 3 classes. But here, I feel like because I was already like in my late 20s. I feel like I was understanding more the materials, I was paying more attention, and I was doing good. I was having good grades, and my teachers made me believe that I could actually have a career. And I graduated in 2000. That's me at Evans Community Adult School. So yeah, they made me believe that I could have a career. I finished in 2000. Sorry. I feel like it was 2016, but I was already like in my early 30s. So I was old enough to stand up for people who didn't want me to follow my own dreams. I get a lot of comments like, when are you gonna get married? You know, how come you don't have kids? Or you're too old for school. Those are like the comments that I still remember. But I feel like I stand up for my beliefs, for what I felt was more important than to follow a tradition that might be a little more difficult if I didn't have a career. So I transferred to Los Angeles City College, and it was here where I needed to pick a career. And to me, math was an easy choice. I feel like I was doing good in math, I was having good grades, and I thought I could be at least a math teacher. And so I wanted to study math. And then along came biology. Biology was a little more challenging. I thought I could follow that path instead. And I feel like I was good at my project. I got good grades in biology. I was invited to apply for the lab assistant position. And well, unfortunately, I didn't have documents, so I couldn't actually work or follow that path. So that was a little disappointing. So I decided to at least complete the Associate of Arts, and for that I need to take more classes. And I took an art history class, and I really fell in love with the works of Vincent van Gogh, and I don't want to say the first name because I'll probably mispronounce it, but Millet was the other artist who really inspired me to go to art school. I felt like there are scenes of agricultural landscapes and farm workers, of orchards. I feel like they really reminded me of my hometown back in Oaxaca, where my parents would go to the fields, my grandparents would go to the fields, and in my head I was thinking, what if I study art, I learn how to paint, how to draw better, and then I can go back to Oaxaca, paint my neighbors, my grandparents, and so that's what I decided to do. I mean, it's not like I never draw before. I've been drawing since I was a kid, but I felt like if I go to art school, I would better those skills. Plus, I never painted before. So that was 2009. Well, so then I graduated from high school in 2006. Sorry, I said 2016. Talking about being so good at math. But that's in the past. Sorry, excuse me. So yeah, I graduated in 2009 with a Bachelor, Associate of Arts in Art and transferred to Cal State Long Beach. So up to this point, I was actually funding my education on my own. It's not like it was that expensive, I guess, but at least it was enough. And I was doing different kinds of jobs like bussing tables or washing cars. I worked at a produce warehouse where I have to load and unload trucks. When I transferred to Cal State Long Beach, I feel like my savings were really low or almost gone. And I figured I was not going to make it to the next semester. And I thought about quitting. I had two brothers and two sisters working in the agricultural fields in Washington State. And I told them my situation, and they surely were very supportive. They were like, you should come here, work with us. You don't have to pay us rent or food. You can save your paychecks for school. I took a leave of absence. After the first semester, I went to Washington State. I worked in the fields. And it worked out. It was really difficult. Limitations were it was really hard. But at least I was able to finish my bachelor's degree without owing that much money. But still, I owe money. So after I graduated, 2012, 2015, and 2012, I went back to the fields and worked for like 3 more years, pay all my debts, and I just feel like I wasn't speaking English yet. There was no people who I can speak English or practice my English with in the orchards. And when I was in school, I felt like I was really practicing for my presentations. To this day, I'm friends with my friends that really helped me through undergrad. I would rehearse my presentation with my friends. They were so patient with me when I would mispronounce something or say something that had a different meaning. It was sort of like an act. But so anyways, that led me to grad school. 2015, I decided to go back to school. I don't know. I guess I was lucky that I never stopped painting. All these 3 years, I would go out in the fields, do little studies on cardboard. My sister would come from Costco, and I would cut out the good part of the cardboard, the bottom part, and then I would do sketches or little studies on it. And so when I applied for grad school, I needed to have a body of work, and all those landscapes that I did were really helpful when I applied. So I started grad school in 2015. My last painting that I was doing, my last painting I did during undergrad had to do with, I graduated in 2012. The Occupy movement started probably like 2010, maybe 2011. I remember listening to my classmates speaking about going to the city hall and taking over the city hall, and pretty much this generation of young people were trying to bring attention to the disparities of the gap between the working class and the wealthy. And I thought I could make a painting out of that subject matter. So this is sort of like the painting I created for the graduation exhibition. I call it 99+1. And it was a painting about, not necessarily about farm workers, It was a painting about the wealthy and the working class. In the front, there's like the dinner table. In the background, you can see the farm workers. To me, the farm workers were the working class, so that's what I would include. And to me, because it was the subject matter that was around me, that's what I would be painting. Every time I would do like studies, landscapes, I would include a farm worker, but it was not sort of like the center of the work. This is my first painting I did in grad school. I feel like I wanted to continue with the same idea of bringing attention to the working class and the wealthy. And I started making these paintings where I would include men or women in suits, thinking that would represent the wealthy, and then I would paint farm workers alongside them. I feel like there was, in my own thinking, I was like, but sometimes farm workers go to weddings and they wear suits, and I don't know, to me it was problematic. And on top of that, I feel like I always had like really, not always, but I would have these critiques where the whole conversation would turn out to be about technicality. I remember comments saying, such as, you're a beautiful painter, Narciso. Or they would be like, oh, I think your colors are off, or your proportions are off. It seems like this person is distorted. So all these comments would take up the whole time, and at the end we will have little time or no time to speak about what I wanted to speak about, the working class and the wealthy. So I got frustrated. I was like, I'm not going to paint anymore. And I went back to what I did during those 3 years in between my grad and graduate studies, which was painting on cardboard. These are some of the samples I did, just studies, little watercolors, and I just wanted that experience again of creating something where nobody has to tell me whether it's good or bad. I just want to have that feeling of enjoying creating art. And I came up with this drawing. It was during a winter break. I was helping my brother at his job. He does upholstery. He fixes something with cars. So he sent me to Costco to get pizza. And then I saw this cool banana box, and I asked if I could take him home. They said yes. It was for a little bit at my brother's, in my brother's car. Eventually, it ended in my studio where I decided to make a drawing. Then, because he was a banana box, I thought I could draw a banana man on it. I was not even thinking about my coworkers. I was just making that association of the box and what's on the box. So I Googled some images of people picking bananas, and this is what I did. I showed it to my class the following semester, and there it was. Like, the conversation suddenly started to change from technicality to more about the subject matter. All these questions about who is this person, do you know this person, have you done this kind of job? And certainly I haven't picked bananas, but but I can relate to the harshness of working in the fields. And I don't know, I feel like that work sort of like narrow it down. What is it that I wanted to do, by making me realize that art can be more than a pretty picture, that art can be powerful, and that we can share stories through art. And I was not going towards painting or speaking about the working class and the wealthy, but it was sort of like in the same realm. I was speaking more about farm workers and the agribusiness. I realized I didn't have to worry about painting a man on a suit to represent the wealthy or the owners of the orchards of the companies or the produce companies, but they could be represented by the labels, by the brands, by the illustrations, and all I had to do was introduce the farm workers with my marks. After that, one portrait, one box, it was pretty cool. I started investigating how, trying to trying to resolve some issues like how do I integrate the illustration with the charcoal drawings? For these ones, I remember I was using still like oil paintings, and I really wanted to use oil paintings because that's what I went to school for. And I started mixing different colors to mimic the colors that were on the boxes. And I was applying them somewhere in the work, and they were so pretty, they were so beautiful that I didn't like them. I was like, I feel like I don't want the work to be about prettiness. I want the work to be sort of like more related to the field work, which is dirty, dusty, harsh. And so I gave up color, but not entirely, because the colors now from my work comes from the boxes. For this piece, I was thinking about, it was right after Trump was campaigning for his first term as president, and he made all those negative comments about Latino people. And I was kind of frustrated, and I really wanted to make a piece that would create a sense, that would acknowledge the work that we do as farm workers, the work that we do as immigrants or like as Latinos. And I wanted to create this a sense of bountiness, I guess, in this piece. And of course, I was in school, we have deadlines, we had other classes to take, so I was like, how do I create this a massive amount of produce, of food? It would take me forever to draw, so I started thinking about it, and I started like cutting out images from other boxes, ripping them off, and then collaging them on the work, and then this issue of how do I integrate this with the charcoal drawings. So I went back to the illustrations, and the issue was that some of the illustrations are waxy, their surface is very smooth, they don't take the charcoal well. So I started using gesso, clear gesso, so that as to create some texture, and then add some charcoal in it. It was a whole process, but I really liked the result. I think that's pretty much summarizes what I wanted to tell through the art. This is just another version of it. Instead of 2 sides from the previous piece, this piece has 4 sides. I did this piece at the Long Beach Museum of Art during a short residency they invited me to do there. I was just thinking about the Port of Long Beach, how all the produce come through the port. And then I was associating that with the work I did when I was working at a produce warehouse, where I had to create these orders for different grocery stores. We'll bring a pallet, we will start stacking up different produce in boxes, and then eventually it will be delivered to the grocery store. So I used a pallet. The imagery was about similar to the previous one. I just wanted to create this sense of bounty, of abundance, brought by a farm worker. At the same museum, the Long Beach Museum of Art, right after I graduated, or around the same area where I graduated, they invited me to do a second residency, but this time it was sort of like a larger residency. The whole summer I was there, and they provided with a studio. And my studio in school was really small, so when I saw the studio that they were letting me work in, it was really big, so I was like, this is my chance to create a large piece. And I visited the gallery where the exhibition was going to take place, and I noticed that the exhibition had a platform, and I immediately thought I want to use this platform somehow. And I never used gold leaf before. I feel like when I was growing up, my parents would drive me to church. I grew up Catholic. They would take me to church, and then I would be like really interested in, not so much in what they have to say, but I was really interested in what I was looking around when I would enter the church. Like right to the left, there were like all these images, and their ages of the images were framed by this golden, luminescent kind of area, and I really was gravitated towards that. I also remember the candles. There was a bunch of candles, and I guess the whole golden atmosphere of the church was really interesting to me. And I really wanted to use gold leaf in school, but I didn't have I guess I couldn't think of like an excuse or a reason to use it. But here, I was free to do whatever I wanted. But also, because I went to art school, this thing in my head, like, but why are you using gold leaf? Even though I had the freedom to use gold leaf, there was always this thing in my head, like, why are you using gold leaf? So I started to learn a little bit about gold, and then I learned that the economy was once backed by actual gold. So then I started thinking about the economy, and then what if I do a piece about the economy? I can use gold leaf, and then I could borrow the pattern from the dollar bill to create this composition. So the centerpiece, instead of having the president, I painted a female farm worker. There are different scenes on each side. I feel like working symmetrically is kind of like the easy way for me to create a composition. Whatever I have on one side, I create on the other side, and it makes life easier for me. And you can see, like, on one side, there's a scene of farm workers. They are high school kids, actually. And the other side, there's another semicircle of farm workers. Actually, you can see, there is an airplane on one side, on this side, just sort of like spraying chemicals on the orchards. And the platform is that, like, what I thought about you doing with the platform. I'm still fresh out of art school. I still, like, really wanted to paint. And remember I said, like, oh no, color, prettiness, and no. But then I was looking for an excuse to paint, and it made me think of the chemicals that are applied to the orchards to create all these beautiful, colorful produce that then they are beautifully displayed at our grocery stores. So I collected all these boxes, some plastic packagings, and I made these life-size oil paintings of the same produce or products like apples, tangerines, blueberries, strawberries, and I placed them in the original packages and I displayed them alongside the piece, sort of like having this conversation between the consumerism and the people who are behind the produce that we consume. Another project that I did in school, or one of the projects I did in school, was to sort of like figure out how much art was depicted in the 1930s, probably 1940s. I can't remember the period of time, but it was very specific. And it turns out there was not a lot of images of farm workers during that period of time. But I remember coming across these illustrations that were very pretty, very idealized. I remember seeing images of, like, animals, like dogs or cats or like clowns. People dressed up in these images alongside the agricultural orchards, but I didn't see farm workers. So that gave me an idea of, like, what if I start a conversation with this illustration versus real people who work in the fields. And then I created this image, a family portrait. A family portrait includes the original image from this illustration. A family portrait, it's a portrait of a family that I met when I was the first season I worked in the fields, which was asparagus. I was picking asparagus, and this family showed up. I remember, so the mom is the one on my left, and the other one are the two kids. So they came to the orchard, and they actually helped us out because it was so late, and we still had a lot of asparagus to pick, so they showed up, and they helped us out, and the kids were just running around. But as soon as the kids grew up, over the years, as soon as they were able to carry a bucket of cherry, they were out there in the fields helping the mom. And I don't know, I just thought I could make a painting and then a contrast. It's also because when I was creating the composition, I thought, like, okay, the nice-looking lady standing, and then these three farm workers standing. And at that time, honestly, I didn't want to go through the hassle of creating very complicated composition which I do now, by combining multiple images. I just saw this image of the family, and I was like, okay, this is perfect.
And as I was painting this nice-looking lady, I was thinking about the issues that happen, so the danger that exists in the fields for farm workers, such as the pesticides, so the ladders. People fall from the ladders all the time. There are so many hoses on the ground. People trip with their buckets. And I don't know, I just thought I could sort of like change the nice-looking lady into a skeleton, sort of like inspired kind of by the skeletons I've seen behind the cargo trucks that represent danger. I created another one later on. This is after school, where when I came across this label, royal, and I named this piece Royalty. I don't know, I just feel like whichever scene I create on these pieces that I create, I have a direct conversation with the illustration from those vintage labels. In this case, I wanted to represent like the way farm workers have lunch, or what's the style of farm workers having lunch, because I was already like in academia and then I was going to the orchards. It was kind of not difficult to see the absurdity of it. Like sometimes it's very rare when we sit on the floor if we are in big cities, but in the orchards, I feel like people have no option but to sit on the ground where possibly chemical residues are. And I don't know, sometimes, it's a taco truck or a lunch truck. I remember like, but when working by the piece rate, people run to the street where the taco truck is, because we have like this short amount of time to have lunch. And sometimes people don't bring lunch, sometimes people do, but most of them don't. So when the taco truck comes, somebody screams lunch and everybody runs out. Whoever comes at the end have very little time to eat. Sometimes just go back just eating on the way. So I thought that was kind of absurd, which also is the story of farm workers not being represented in art. When I saw these paintings from the masters, I don't know if I want to remember who made what. I will try. That's John Singer Sargent, American painter who lived in France, who painted Wife of a Banker, and the painting's called Madame X. Right, I don't know, I would say 1900s. And then maybe 1800s. And then the middle one is made by another American painter, John Singleton Copley. I don't remember the name of the piece, but I remember the context. She is the wife of a politician who also was a landowner, and there's two portraits, her and the husband. And I was just drawn by the produce that she's holding on her hand, which suggests to me that that's what they grow in their orchards. The third one is by Il Bronzino, much earlier, I guess, 1500, Young Man with a Book. And this painting sort of like suggests education. And so I was thinking about the absurdity again, about the opportunities for women. I was thinking particularly about my grandma, my mom, my sisters, who, I don't know if I should say this, but like, believe it or not, just not that many years ago, she was getting in trouble for playing basketball, because apparently basketball was for men, or a men's sport. I thought that was ridiculous. And then on top of that, like, historically women they haven't had the same opportunities as men. And I just thought, why not painting female farm workers in this, in art? Sort of like subverting what's on the master paintings. And I came out with this. The first one, it's a lady I met in the fields. I asked her if she could stop by my brother's house whenever she would go to an event, quinceañera or whatever. And then she shows up like this, and then we had a talk. I explained to her who Madame X was, and what's the context around it, and what is it that I wanted to switch around. And so we came out with this piece. And I didn't want to just draw her in the context of a nice-looking lady being on art, but I also wanted to include who she was. So I included some of the. It's hard to see, but there is some like picking buckets, apple picking bag on the top. Oh, I have a pointer. But anyways, I also didn't want to sort of like separate the media that I was working on, only because I was experimenting with drawing on linen. I didn't want to just make it a drawing on linen, but also included some kind of collage. I collaged, I get to use a pointer. So all this is collage from the boxes, and it's interesting because you see it closely. They have some text in it, and you can read stuff. And the second one is portrait of my mom. Just thinking about how the original painting had this wealthy woman showing off the produce that they produce in their orchards. I was just thinking about how harsh it was for us growing up, how something was hard to have even food on our, I was going to say table, but we didn't have a table. We sat on the ground. So I remember my mom going to the fields and like just collect edible plants. And that's what I included in my mom's portrait. And the third one is a portrait of a young woman I met in the fields. She would go and work in every summer, and she was a high school student. But I'm happy to say that after she graduated from high school, she managed to go to college and have a degree. Now that painting lives, I don't know where it lives, but it was donated to the Long Beach Museum of Art for their fundraising. And then the one on the center lives at my brother's house in Washington State. And the first one, I actually gave her the painting, so it lives in her house. Speaking about a college and women having the same opportunities, I feel like I started to realize at this point in my life, it was 2017, 2018, thinking about education and how important it is. I would, whenever I would go to the fields and we have this, we have lunch and then we'll sit around, I would start talking about education. Some coworkers were kind of annoyed by that, but still I would just be like stubborn and be like, hey, you should go to school, you should go learn English. And there were so many excuses, right? Like, I'm so tired when I get home, I just want to have a drink, I don't know, watch TV. And then a lot of them, or most of them, have families either here or in their country of origin. And so it's really hard. It's really hard to like make time for school, but I will always encourage their kids to go to school. This is a ceramic tile version that I did from the original one. I'm not sure why I included both of them, but this is sort of like the original one I created on cardboard. It was at a time where I didn't know, well, it was very early when I started drawing on cardboard, and if you notice, there's no illustrations in it, because I had arranged the box with some pretty cool illustrations on the other side, and it turns out I was freaking out because I had a deadline, so it was easier for me to have a blank canvas, quote unquote, and just a drawing on it. So I flip it and I started drawing on it. So that's why I have a version of it on plain brown cardboard. And speaking about education, I created this piece in response to sort of like my own experience going to school. I did this piece maybe 2021, 2022, when I was already working with the gallery and I was already making some kind of money, and I was living in Long Beach in this what they call desert, food desert area, and there was no like actual like grocery stores around me. I had to like go really far, and I signed up for this program where you pay some kind of money and then this company sends to your house fresh organic produce. So I was doing that for a little bit, and then I felt like kind of weird about it, so I stopped. But at least I kind of like had that sense of privilege, right? Privilege. But then I was thinking, like, how did I get here? How did it happen? So it was all through school. I feel like school, gave me all these opportunities, not only to work and represent a community, but also create work that could possibly be shown for to other people through other institutions. And there is a picture of three young girls, sort of like standing by the staircase behind in front of the trailer. And to me, their future is represented in the shadow. All the shadows are sort of like celebrating that they have graduated. And then the next piece is about how do I get to the community? All this time I've been in school. My main audience has been my committee, my professors, my classmates. And how do I get the art to the community? And so I started by sort of like experimenting on presenting the art outside of the gallery. So I created this piece. I was invited to a group show where it was mostly about for performance artists. I was like, I'm too shy to do some kind of performance, but I created this piece that could be participatory. I wrap, based on my experience working in the produce warehouse, I noticed that the more expensive the fruit, the fancier it is presented. And I noticed that the most expensive produce would come individually wrapped. So what I did was I bought some apples, I created these portraits, and I, by means of rotage, I created these portraits on this tracing paper, and I wrapped every apple so people would, from the gallery, it was a gallery, could come and create and grab an apple and just sort of like experience the art outside of the gallery. And I borrowed this little clip from a user on Instagram. I guess his name is Josh Vasquez, who's also like an artist. And this is what we like. So yeah, that's what I like. That's what I was going for. I wanted people to take the apple, maybe eat or not eat the apple, but at least experience confronting a farm worker. I feel like another attempt to bring the art to the farm working community was to create these life-size vinyls. I created these. I didn't make them, but I paid for them to be made. These life-size vinyl prints of the work that eventually I took to Washington State. My idea was to bring these vinyl prints and just ask for permission at a grocery store or at a liquor store, so if I could put it on the wall on the street so people can see it. It turns out my brother, who's very supportive of my work now, I'm sorry, brother. He was like, what if I take him to the city hall and I want to have them in a more official kind of place for people to see it so he can be taken care of. So I was there only for a couple of days, and I was like, okay, it's your project now. So eventually he managed the city to have those pieces, 2 at the local park and 2 at the local library. So that's sort of like makes me feel a little closer. I feel like the art is coming closer to the farm workers. I created some calendars. That were distributed among farm workers in Washington State and some areas in California, some areas that I have visited before. There is some problems with it because I only have, I don't know, there is so many farm workers, and I wish everyone can have one, but it's kind of hard. And I wish I could print them every year, but I don't know, it was just a test, and hopefully it'll come back. Of course, the ideal way to bring this to bring the art to the masses. It's by printing them on the shopping bags. That not only will bring the art to people outside the gallery, but also will create consciousness about farm workers. And I created this piece at a residency I did in Fresno for Arte Americas. It was sort of like my first kind of meaningful being very close to the farm workers. I don't know if you know, but Fresno is a farm working community, and when I had a show there, it was so moving, so touching to see all these farm workers being in the gallery, experiencing the work. They would see the work, and we'll have conversations about what we were looking at and the work, and we will sort of like compare and contrast who made the most buckets per season. But it was so interesting. I don't have images of the actual like conversation I had with all these farm workers, but I have this picture with the organizers, and the organizers are either tied somehow to farm workers, either the grandparents or the parents were farm workers or are farm workers, or some of them are farm workers. I sort of like recognize them now. But I was so moved that when I went back to my studio, I was like, I feel like these people need to be seen. And I've been creating these portraits of farm workers covered up with bandanas and goggles or both, and I was like, people need to see their humanity. People need to see their faces. And I did a series of portraits on these boxes. I don't know. I just felt like by removing their bandana and their goggles, people can have a more empathy towards farm workers. I don't know. I guess it's fair to mention from the where's the pointer? Oh. Like, I guess it's fair to mention that from this side, like the ones with the bandanas, it's not like they're always wearing bandanas and goggles, and it's not that they're always like not covered up, I guess. It's just that whenever the work is like so hard and they have to make the most out of the time, they have to work really fast. And I remember like my heart pounding like really fast. So it's really hard to breathe with a bandana on, and it's really hard to have both because of the sweat. The goggles can get foggy, and it's just hard to see. And then people either take off their goggles or take off their masks or the bandanas. So it's just like it's kind of sad, like to learn that they have to expose themselves somehow to these issues in the fields like pesticides or the sun. Just to just to make an extra buck, I guess. This is another piece I created for an exhibition in Seattle, where I invited most of the people I knew in Washington State that I work alongside with to the exhibition. A lot of them showed up to the exhibition, and it was so interesting again to see farm workers interacting with the work. I feel like some of them were taking even selfies with the work behind them. It was interesting to see them interact with the gallery. Some of them never been to an art gallery, and I just remember trying to interact with the gallery people. There were some guests, like museum directors, there for the opening, and it was interesting to see how they were like everyone in their own corner, but luckily they invited us to have dinner. And I don't know if everyone was invited. I was invited, but I invited everybody to dinner. And it was interesting to see their interaction at the restaurant, where everyone got their own seats. But then I was sort of like introducing them, trying to make them to mingle amongst themselves, I guess. I don't know how that worked out, but it was pretty, to me, it was very satisfactory to see the opportunity to experience like a different culture and to get out of their comfort zone. I think that's important. Well, here's some of the people that showed up to the exhibition. Time flies. seems like we are not almost, we're at the end. This image is one of the recent images, one of the most recent images I've created. I did this image here in Ann Arbor, in the studios, 3535 Green Road. It's, I don't know how much I should say about this piece because of the times we're living in right now, where I want to be visible, I want to be acknowledged, but then I'm Latino, I don't know if you should know me, you know? So, but I guess I could say this piece acknowledge working class people, people who work behind the scenes, I visited some restaurants here in Ann Arbor, some grocery stores, some production factories, where there's a lot of people working really hard behind the scenes for us to enjoy whatever it is in the spotlight, right? Like the front of the restaurant or like at the grocery store. And I don't know, I just wanted to create a piece that would acknowledge that would represent them, that would give visibility to those hardworking people in a general sense. So I don't think there is Q&A here, but there's going to be a Q&A at the gallery. You can see this piece at the gallery and others. There's a map of the gallery in case you know where you are. I don't know where I'm but thank you so much for coming and listening to the stories. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.